The thing.
Never know exactly when we're going live here, but probably right away here.
Oh yeah, I think we're live, dude.
There you go. Well, awesome. You are probably one tired individual getting back from Las Vegas. Double or nothing for AEW, which is going to be the focus of today's podcast. Norman, how you doing?
I'm exhausted, but still buzzing a little bit. I had fun, but yeah, I'm absolutely exhausted. The mistake I made was um, being too cheap to buy accommodation for last night and just deciding to drive home. And yeah, big mistake, really, big mistake. But I saved like $200. I can't complain too much.
Well, when the show runs as long as it runs, too, you probably weren't anticipating that you would get out of there so late. And we're going to talk a
Dude,
little bit
I
about that, too.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be out of there by 9 at the latest. Like, I was very optimistic. I was like, AEW pay-per-views normally aren't that bad. I feel like they're gonna. I feel like because it's on the West Coast. I feel like it's gonna be like a hard out at 9 p.m. And boy, was I wrong. Especially when you factor in the media scrum. But we'll get to that later too, I guess.
Yeah, I was up late watching that media scrum. And yes, we'll talk about Tony Khan specifically and how long his answers were. He was very winded. He had a lot to say. And at one point, sort of flipped out during the press conference on not necessarily on anybody, but just in terms of a response to a question that I thought was very interesting. So let's dig right into it. I mean, the big news was that Hangman Page and CM Punk were fighting for the AEW Championship, but that isn't really what kind of focused everybody's attention heading into the show itself. Most people were focused on what happened about 24 hours earlier, which was that apparently MJF just disappeared. On Saturday, he was supposed to be at a meet and greet for AEW and did not show up for that. Fans that were waiting in line didn't see him. Then, of course, the storm comes that, well, what's going on? Is this real? Is this a work? You never know with MGF because he's constantly in kayfabe mode, but he's always doing his character. Multiple reports, including SRS from Fightful, says no, this is real. He says there's a flight booked for MJF out of Las Vegas that night. Then reveals that he didn't get on that flight, so nobody really knows if MJF's going to show up. And then we learn that he is going to be there. They are promoting the match, and it's the first match of the night. So let's start with that. What did you make of the MJF chaos, the storyline? Is it a shoot? Is it a work? Did they put it on first because of all that? What are you thinking when you hear about all this MJF, especially being there? What's the buzz around the event?
Yeah, I mean that was weird. Honestly, there was a lot of people talking. The casinos were packed with regarding the situation. I think I think a lot of people were kind of split on whether or not it was a shoot or a work. I think for the most part, people probably just thought it was. There wasn't too much. There didn't seem to be too much logic in it being a work. I guess like to what end? Like what was the end? What was the sort of end result if it was a work? I guess maybe sell a few more pay-per-views or something. I don't know, but so in my opinion, I think it probably is I think it's a shoot, right? I think there definitely was some sort of hostility. There was some clash or some disagreement. But I think they may have. I think Tony Khan probably thought fast and tried to rectify the situation as soon as possible, and that's why MJF ended up. I don't think MJF showing up and participating in the match is evidence that it wasn't a real situation, right?
Right.
So yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Well, the big thing everybody's thinking about is, oh my God, what's happening here? Is this the AEW version of Sasha Banks and Naomi? Did he just bail on the event? Did he hold them up at a time that they knew and he knew this was huge for AEW, right? Wardlow's going to go over here. He's going to be a massive star. That's the plan. Tons of buildup, weeks, months of this match being kind of highly anticipated, and then MJF just sort of vanishes, right? That's the big storyline. And the work situation here that everybody's talking about is, was this controversial enough that people wanted to know would MJF be there? And so maybe they would tune in, or they would, not flip over to the NBA as the pay-per-view is starting because MJF is going on first, right? It's hard to know, and I agree with you. If he does show up for this match, there's a difference between him being in character and not showing up at a meet and greet, which is not cool because you've left fans, in the lurch. But at the same time, if you've ever seen MJF at a meet and greet, he's a jerk. Like, he's absolutely sort of fun to meet, but at the same time, he's a total prick. Like, you don't want to actually have a conversation with this guy because he will insult you. And
Yeah.
so I don't know how much fans or AEW even cares that he didn't get a chance to meet with fans, only because it stirred up so much debate. That I'm sure it did interest people in the pay-per-view in the final 24 hours. And Tony Khan was very concerned about this Game 7 between the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. I mean, so much so he talked about it, he tweeted about it. He was very aware and talked to Dana White of the UFC about how he structures his pay-per-views because he wasn't sure that he would lose buys and viewers for the pay-per-view because of the Game 7. So I don't know how much of that plays into all. What I have heard, I guess, is that MJF wasn't really talking to people. He wasn't around backstage much. As soon as his match was over, he took off. All of which could still be part of a work. You never really know, but we'll find out, right? If he shows up on Dynamite or he's going to be, at the next few events. He's got time left on his contract. I guess Tony Khan could let him out of it, but let's talk about the match a little bit. What did you think? I mean, he shows up, he makes Wardlow look like $1 million. So MJF is professional in the respect that he does do what he's supposed to do, which is take like 10 power bombs, make Wardlow look like the huge star, and then just sort of skedaddles out of there while AEW gives Wardlow his contract. What did you make of the match?
Mission definitely was, I guess, as advertised. What most people expected. I think. I think some of those power bombs looked a little stiff. I don't know if there was anything. I'm not saying there was anything intentional there for sure, but yeah, definitely some of them looked a little bit rough. But I guess if you do like 10 in a row, that's kind of inevitable that you're gonna maybe not nail all of them. But yeah, I mean, he did a great job, and I mean, it would have been very, very disappointing if he had no showed that event, and it would have really sucked for Wardlow, who has just got this like momentous momentum behind him right now. He's like so over. I think I said in the Slack chat recently, it's like in Wardlow, AEW have from the ground up essentially created the perfect WWE superstar, right? Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating to watch. His career trajectory has been fascinating to watch. But yeah, I mean, mission accomplished. And I'm curious to see where he goes from here. I think, there was a time like back in I mean, not even, I mean, this could still happen now, right? We saw with like, if you go back to Ryback, right? He kind of went into the main event picture pretty quickly. I mean, he never actually won the big one, but I mean, he was thrown into that main event scene pretty quickly and then very quickly exposed. But yeah, I don't think we're going to have that issue with Wardlow. I think he's more charismatic. I think he understands his character more, and I think he's just more gifted in the ring than someone like Ryback for sure.
He seems to be. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, dude. Finish. Go on.
I was gonna say Wardlow seems to be very professional.
Absolutely.
He understands. He's the WCW Goldberg. He's the WWE Brock Lesnar. But he's a mix of both guys with the understanding that he was brought in to eventually become something big, and it's worked out for him. And he is at the precipice of being a massive deal for AEW, but it hasn't gone to his head. Like you talk about guys like Ryback being exposed and can't work. Well, he also had it immediately go to his head, and then he got real big for his britches. Goldberg, there's stories about that happening too, right? Lesnar is a massive star. Lesnar knows what his value is and always has. Wardlow seems to be the guy that's always done things right. We haven't heard much about his interactions backstage, but what we have heard is that he's just a really good guy. He's very loyal to AEW. He understands his position. He understands what the company has done for him, and he's looking forward to what's coming, but not getting too far ahead of himself. So, yeah, I think they have a massive, massive star here, and I think the match was booked exactly the way it should have been. You needed a guy like MJF, who's the heel here, to just get his butt whooped like that. That's how that should have gone. That's exactly how it went. It was a prolonged squash match, essentially, is what this was.
Yeah, and MJF is the way that he has crafted his own character over the years. I don't know if he realizes it, but he's ostensibly impervious to burial, right? I feel like even though we just saw him get his ass whipped, he got buried. He barely got any offense in. He just got squashed totally. He can still challenge for the title in 6 months. and I don't think anyone would complain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's almost like the way his character is designed and crafted. It just doesn't matter if he gets squashed by a big guy, right?
Yeah,
It
you
just
can
works.
understand the comparisons to the Miz, right? Like maybe
Yes.
MJF is a higher level, in that top main event
Hmm.
picture on a regular basis, but you put the Miz in there, and everybody's like, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah,
Right?
for
And no matter
sure.
win
Yeah.
or lose, it doesn't really matter. So I could see
Yeah.
why those comparisons are there for sure. Okay, so if we move on from that match, we head over to the Hardys versus the Young Bucks next. I remember you messaging me from the event going, "This is kind of boring. This is not what we
Mm.
were probably expecting from the Hardys and
Hmm.
the Young Bucks," which we've seen before. If you're a Ring of Honor fan, right before
Mm.
the Hardys made their debut or their return at WrestleMania, these two teams had fought each other. And what was a very, for really, really loyal wrestling fans who know, all the products, it was a big deal. That
Mm.
match between the Hardys and the Young Bucks. This was
Hmm.
not that feeling, was it?
No, not really. I mean, I can't speak for, everybody, but in my section where I was sitting, a lot of people did go to the bathroom when this match started, and some merch and stuff. I think it definitely picked up towards the end. Like I think definitely it definitely wasn't like the worst match I've ever seen. It just
Right.
something felt off for most of it. I think they pulled it together near the end, and in the end, it was mostly okay. But yeah, and also I feel like the build for it hasn't been like the best thing about the age when the Bucks came out dressed up as the Hardys, and I
Yeah.
mean that was genius. And basically, they kind of got away with the lackluster build just from that. They kind of saved it with that, squeezed in like 6 weeks worth of build into one episode of Rampage, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I mean, look, Hardy Boys, legendary tag team. Everybody loves them. They're a draw to to an extent. They're like still a draw. They're not, you know, used to be in the ring. Making much effort to hide their weaknesses. I feel like
Yeah.
guys you can kind of they try to work around the weaknesses, and I'm not seeing that with the Hardys that much these days. But yeah.
Was it me or did Jeff look kind of out of it halfway through the match? Like he seemed to pick it up at the end, like you mentioned. It sounds like these guys saved this match, which I would agree with. I thought the last half was much better than the first half. But is that really what you want to say about a Hardys versus Young Bucks match? Is they were able to save this match? But
Yeah.
to me, Jeff Hardy looked like either hit his head or he was out of it for a little
Interesting.
bit and sort of
Mm.
seemed kind of groggy and he disappeared.
Mm.
And there was a lot of stuff going on with Matt Hardy, who was better
Mm.
than I thought he would be, but does look a little bit older and slower.
Mm.
But then Jeff got back into it again. Like he started getting into the finish of the match. But there was a point there in the middle where I was like, what's going on with Jeff? He seems like very, very weird. Did you or anybody there notice that live or
So
was that
yeah,
just
I mean,
me?
there's actually interesting you bring that up because there's obviously like a lot of nuanced details that are easy to miss if you're actually in the arena because I'm not getting like sort of close up camera shots. I'm not getting commentary sort of explaining things to me. Um, so and I mean, I definitely just thought in general for like the first half of the match that things were a little off. I didn't necessarily pinpoint that it was Jeff, but yeah, that makes sense now that you've said it.
Yeah, it was just really interesting. And he seemed to be all right afterwards, but he just sort of took himself out of the match for a while, which I thought maybe that was the booking. I'm not really sure, but it seemed a little strange. But I think we're both probably calling this one a loser, if not only because it's Hardys versus Young Bucks and you expect more, but this is probably Young Bucks are right where they need to be. The Hardys are on a downward trend here, and this probably was a representation of what we can expect out of these guys moving forward, which is not, you know, not what you want. Okay, so Athena and Stokely Hathaway make their debut in the next match, which is Jade Cargill versus Anna Jay, which I thought was a half decent match, actually. I thought Anna Jay looked pretty good. They gave her a lot more offense than I expected they would. The match lasted longer. But you made a very interesting point when watching this, saying this felt overbooked. This felt like there was a lot going on here at the end, very clustered, kind of chaotic. Jade said after in the press conference that both Stokely Hathaway and Smart Mark Sterling are sticking with her. So she's
Mm.
got not only just a lawyer, now she's got a manager. So what'd you make of this? The debuts, are they what everybody's hoping out of this? Were you surprised? And apparently Malcolm Bivens' 90-day expiry with NXT ended the day before this pay-per-view. And
Oh.
Tony Khan said he did not talk to him at all until the morning of the show. So he did not know what he was going to have Stokely Hathaway do, other than he knew that he wanted him. But this all came together the morning of the pay per view.
Yeah, I thought the match was decent. I think Jade Cargill, similar to what we were saying with Wardlow, I think she's just, just money. And they've got like a mega star on their hands there, especially if they kind of utilize her to her full potential. Yeah, and then Anna Jay did well. So solid match, did as advertised, basically whatever. And then the post match stuff was a bit congested. Guess like I mean I think there are times when debuting two people at once kind of works, like we saw that with Danielson and Cole when they debuted like immediately after each other, and I think that worked. The Athena and Stokely Hathaway thing, I just thought Stoke came out and I was like, okay, cool. And then someone else came out and then I was like, I didn't even have time to process Stokely being there, Yeah, I mean, it was just a little bit overbooked, but it certainly wasn't unbearable. It wasn't unwatchable. It was fine.
Do you think this is a byproduct of AEW only having 4 pay-per-views in a year? Like, do you
Probably a
think
little bit, yeah.
if there was 12 or 10 or whatever, that they might have spread this out a little bit? Or is Tony Khan so fixated on the idea of these surprise debuts? Because his roster is huge now. I mean, too big to a lot of people. And I don't know that I would disagree with that. I think his roster is getting out of control a little bit. But he's putting all these guys almost every week. There's somebody new coming, right?
Yeah.
He loves that WCW. Let's just shock you every week on Nitro feel, where somebody's coming out. Do you think this is just him going, well, I've got 2 people, I got to use them somehow. Let's pop them in there. Because I agree with you. When you bring 2 people in like that, like Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuting was very well done, because you think you're done when you're like, oh man, it's going to be Daniel Bryan, and then it's Cole, and then you're like, oh, but this is awesome, it's Adam Cole, and then it's Daniel Bryan. Like, that was really well done. In this case, it just felt like, okay, all of a sudden we've got one, oh, we've got the other, and neither really got much attention because they were crammed into 3 minutes. So,
Yeah.
do you think they just don't have enough shows to spread this stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. I think they wanna. I think they wanna kind of maybe develop a reputation, which they do have already, but like a reputation of, you never know what's going to happen if you tune into an AEW pay per view, right? And then they can sell more views and they can sell more tickets to pay per views. I would have maybe had Stokely debut on Dynamite, for example. I don't think, and then, they've done debuts on Dynamite before, but yeah, just maybe, like I said, it wasn't a huge deal, but yeah. I think it would have killed them to have Stoke debut on Dynamite. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I guess you're because they only have 4 babies. But like I said, they want you to, and they already have earned this reputation. But yeah, they want you to be like, anything can happen. Who's going to debut? If you watch an AEW pay per view, at least one person is going to debut.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I'm with you on the Dynamite thing, especially because Hathaway Stokely is such a good talker, right? Like, don't you want to have a segment where he comes out and actually says something? That's the skill. He's the manager. He's going to be the mouthpiece for Jade Cargill here. Why would you not set it up so that in his first debut in AEW, he's talking, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I thought that was a little surprising that they didn't do that. Okay, moving on to the Owen Hart tournament, we get both matches in a row. We've got the men's final between Samoa Joe and Adam Cole, and then we've got the women's final between Britt Baker and Ruby Soho. I was a little disappointed in the Adam Cole and Samoa Joe match, to be honest with you. We had talked in the podcast about how we figured maybe this might be the match, that this was the first time for these two stepping in the ring together, even though you would think that they've wrestled before. But I got the feeling that the chemistry was okay. The match was decent, but these guys have such a reputation for putting on incredible, in-ring performances that this was only so-so for me. Thought it could be a little bit longer. Thought there could be more riding on it. The finish felt a little like, I don't want to say rush, but like 3 super kicks and then, it's finished and it's over, right? It was a little strange to me. I just expected more. I didn't hate the match, but I just kind of figured there'd be more to it. What was your take on it? What was the reception? Were people hot for this match?
I would say yeah, I mean, people were pumped for both of these matches, I'd say, but maybe things had started to sort of die down. People had started to calm down a little bit at this point. People were obviously excited to see Samoa Joe and Adam Cole for the first time ever. yeah, I agree with you. It wasn't like that. I think they both have a better match in them. Yeah, it wasn't like the most exciting thing, and yeah, and again, yeah, the finish kind of was a little bit felt a little bit sudden, I guess. But and I still don't even know if I still am kind of processing how I feel about Adam Cole and Britt Baker both winning the tournaments.
Yeah.
Honestly, I also like I know that this was yeah. I mean, I don't know. This was it was the inaugural Owen Hart tournament, right? So it needed the majesty of these finals happening on a pay per view. But that did pose some issues regarding with timing and pacing, didn't it?
Well, yeah, and Tony Khan said a couple things that gave away why, to me, they did what they did here. I was with you. I thought Adam Cole should win this. I don't love the way they booked him as a singles wrestler, and this is a big, good thing for him to have won this tournament. He can brag about it, all that other stuff. I thought this would be an opportunity for them to do something with Ruby Soho because I think they've kind of dropped the ball with her, and I really thought, oh man, this could really move her up
Yeah,
into the upper echelon of the women's division. I don't
right.
hate that Britt Baker won this, but when they had the awards ceremony, so they brought both Britt and Adam Cole up on the stage. Martha Hart comes out. She gives her speech. She gives the belts to both people. And then Tony Khan says in the post show media scrum that he was going to give Martha Hart as much time as she wanted to talk. That he had no limit on it. He's like, she could have taken half an hour and I wouldn't have cut her off. Not only because he wanted to be respectful of what Owen Hart's legacy was and Martha Hart and all this, the foundation and everything like that, but this was right around the basketball game. So he was very well aware that the longer he was able to push this, the better the chance that he could get those last three matches on without the basketball game being something that they would have to worry about. So
Yeah.
I when I heard those comments, I'm like, okay, it makes a lot of sense now. Like I understand you've got Adam Cole, you've got Britt Baker. Everybody knows they're connected. They're both standing on the stage at the same time with Martha Hart. They both got Owen t-shirts on. They're both wearing pink and black. Everything sort of aligns, right? Yeah, maybe this goes better for Ruby Soho in a different environment in a different situation.
Hmm.
But I didn't hate it for that reason because I could suspend my whatever that Adam Cole and Britt Baker are heels in this situation and they're there to be
Mm.
respectful of Owen Hart, who they probably have a tremendous amount of respect for. So in that situation, I'm like, okay, I get why they did this. Do I wish Ruby would have won? Probably, but
Yeah.
I thought that match was decent too. The only thing I hated was the sharpshooter. I'm not sure if that
Yeah.
was
It was
intentionally
bad.
bad or
Yeah.
accidentally bad, but it was just not good.
Yeah, I feel like the sharpshooter is one of those moves that's like probably maybe look. I don't know. People maybe think they can pull it off and then they can't. Like and then it just goes to show you, again, it's just that cementing the notion that Bret Hart is the best wrestler of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Ruby, I would have liked Ruby to win. She's lost two tournament finals now in AEW. I don't think she's quite fulfilled what she hasn't quite reached the expectations that we wanted when they signed her. That doesn't mean, and it's not, we can't complain too much because I'm sure her time will come, right? We know AEW kind of has a sort of rotational policy. So yeah, I'm sure something good will happen soon. But yeah, so far I would say she's had some good matches, but so far her AEW tenure hasn't been super mind blowing or anything.
Yeah, my only concern for her is the same concern that people have when they look at the WWE roster and how big it is that as you had this opportunity to do something with her, you didn't have necessarily all the women that you could choose over Ruby Soho. Now you do, right? Now you've got Tony Storm. Now you've got Athena, who's Ember Moon. Now you've got a bunch of people that you've brought in that you've got to go, okay, well, what are we going to do with them? So does Ruby Soho take a back seat now? That's the
Yeah.
only thing I'm kind of like, really? You had your window. Or have you lost your window now? Maybe not.
Hmm.
Maybe they still push her. I'm not really sure. But you've got a lot of people you got to worry about now, right? Because your roster's getting bigger and bigger, and you've got these people who came in and think that you're going to do something with them.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens here.
And Rancid playing her to the ring, so
That was cool.
yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
Free Rancid gig.
There you go. What I thought was maybe the wrestling match of the night was Kyle O'Reilly and Darby Allin. Now, it wasn't the car crash that the Anarchy in the Arena was, which I'm sure was very interesting to see live. But what did you think of the O'Reilly Allin match? I thought this, like, maybe Darby Allin's kind of taken a little bit back of a backseat here. Maybe he's one of the originals that is being overlooked a little, and maybe they just look at him and say, well, he's Darby Allin, he's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But I thought this was a breakout match for Kyle O'Reilly. What did you think?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought they were both great. Clearly O'Reilly really needed he really needed he needed a big singles win on a pay-per-view. He's got it. That being said, I do feel like this could have been a Dynamite match, like a Dynamite main event, just in terms of the pacing of the show and how long the show was. I don't obviously, nobody wants to complain about more bang for your buck, right? The pay-per-view costs like $50 or whatever, and so if you get more wrestling, that's a good thing for the most part. But yeah, I do feel like this match probably could have just been like a Dynamite main event. But I am very happy that I already got a pay-per-view singles win.
Yeah, this was one of those matches that Tony Khan added last minute. It was the least promoted match on the card, which I thought made it quite interesting that it might have been the best match on the card. But this was the example where Tony was kind of like, man, we got to make this pay-per-view longer. And he talked at great length about that in the media scrum and the game 7 between the Celtics and the Heat, and how to get those last 3 matches on so that there was time for people who might have been watching the basketball game to go, oh, hey, we're all together. We're just coming off this game. Oh, AEW still got some pretty big matches going on over there, and they might get some late buys. That's why the O'Reilly Darby Allin match was put in on the show and where it was put. So I'm also not surprised they were given a lot of time to make it into a decent match. What did the Darby Allin miss look like? I was watching that and I thought, man, that looked bad. He was going through a dive on the ropes, which I think was originally supposed to be the headlock that O'Reilly puts him in on the outside when he tries it the second time, but he missed. And so he hit pretty hard. Now, usually you're at the arena, things that happen right around the ring. If you're not on the side of the arena that you see it, it's hard to make out
you don't
happen.
see it. Yeah.
But do people go, oh, that's not good?
You know what? I think if it had been any other wrestler, that may have happened. But I think because it was Darby, I think most people were just like, "Oh, whoa," So yeah, there wasn't it wasn't like anyone was like super scared or super worried or anything. Yeah, but
he didn't
I
stay
think
down
if it
long.
had been
To his credit, he got right back up.
exactly,
It seemed to be okay.
Yeah.
Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb. I thought this was a half decent match where both women proved that they're among the better in-ring technical wrestlers in the women's division for AEW. Not a surprising result here. Thunder Rosa hangs on to her title here. What did you make of this? Was this a match that people were looking forward to? Was this sort of another throwaway match that kind of wasn't as high profile as some of the other stuff on the card?
When it started, it felt like people were it felt like the energy was kind of dipping a little bit. But by the end of the match, I think people were like very, very into it. And I mean, I loved the match. I thought it was brilliant. And I definitely want to. I mean, I need to rewatch the entire pay-per-view, just to sort of pick up on some of those nuanced details that I missed by being there. But yeah, I thought it was. Maybe if I watched it, I won't enjoy it quite as much. But being there and watching it, I just thought it was really, really brilliant and extremely my shit, basically. But yeah, by the end of it, people were a lot more than they were at the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're both so good, right? Like, Thunder Rosa is really talented. And if Serena Deeb wasn't an active wrestler, she'd be coaching all the women in that division, probably, right? Like, she's got that much skill. So I wasn't surprised that it was a solid match both way around. Okay, the Anarchy in the Arena match, which I suppose is now the new version of the Stadium Stampede, which they'll no longer do because fans are back.
Yeah.
Jericho said this is a match that they will probably use again in the future. Would you like to see another one of these? It looked pretty chaotic. It was all over the arena. Everybody was in different places. To me, it was just somewhat of an organized car crash where you just had to look around and figure out what was going on. Everyone's going to bleed. Everything's going to happen here. They do eventually wind up back in the ring where we've got Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, John Moxley, and Bryan Danielson kind of finishing things off. And Danielson gets choked out by the rope while in the walls of Jericho, and Jericho's Appreciation Society pulls this one off, gets the win here. What did you think of the match? Was it as crazy as it seemed to be? It seemed like there was so much going on, and it was hard to take it in. You talk about needing to watch this again. I think even people who watch this on pay-per-view are going to need to watch this again because there's just so much that you probably could have missed.
Yeah, this was wild. And basically, everywhere you looked, there was something different going on, right? And so it was like 5 different matches happening at the same time in different parts of the arena. It was really, really wild. It was very fun. People were really into it. very, yeah, just bonkers and enjoyable. I think there's yeah, like I say, I need to rewatch it. I've seen a lot of people saying that it's like the best AEW match ever. I've seen a couple of people say that it's like the best match ever. I don't know about. It was a lot of fun, and I think it was kind of almost perfectly booked, I would say, for what it was. I utilize the gimmick again, the Anarchy in the Arena thing, but I want it to be more spontaneous. I don't want it to be a thing where like every Double or Nothing we have an Anarchy in the Arena match, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't rank it up there in terms of like one of the best matches AEW's ever done. Was it
Yeah.
entertaining? Sure. Was it totally different than everything else that was on the card? Yes, absolutely. You knew what this match was going to be the minute it started. The minute they kept playing Wild Thing, John Moxley's music, and Jericho smashed the soundboard to turn the music off. You knew that they had thought this through, and it was interesting how they were trying to progress through different stages of what was going on, even though it looked like total chaos. I thought that was interesting. I thought it was pretty smart the way that they pulled it all together. Is it the best thing they've ever done? No, I don't even think it's close. But I thought it was entertaining. Brian Danielson was somebody who I was quite interested in watching because at first I was like, I don't know if this is up his alley. Like this doesn't seem like the kind of match that he would really get into. And then he's the guy at the end of it, yelling, screaming, "I'm going to kick his head off." This is blatantly swearing on the pay-per-view loudly. Really seemed to be into it. And then the finish involves him where he's the guy who actually sort of loses it for the team. So what about Eddie Kingston? I saw you post a tweet that, this is the guy that we should probably be watching out for. Was he the guy that got most of the buzz? Everybody was really into his stuff?
That was definitely the case. Yeah, I kind of was being sarcastic. I tweeted the gif of him, walking down to the ring with the gasoline canister and was like, Punk is a transitional champion because Eddie Kingston's about to up. Which obviously I think that's a possibility, right? I would like to see a Eddie Kingston World Championship reign, even if it is just a sort of brief, kind of thing. Maybe like a Mick Foley kind of thing. I would like to see that at some. I don't think it's going to happen, within the next 6 months to a year, but I think it's a possibility, and I do think he deserves it. I think he's just, a genuine, lovable person who's just thoroughly entertaining and absolutely gives 110% to everything he does all the time and has done for the last 20 years. Yeah, I love him. Nothing much to say.
He's certainly got his fan base. Like he's a guy who, when you watch his promos, you're like, man, this dude's amazing. And then you see what he's giving when he's in the ring and what he's trying to do and separate himself from everybody else. He's definitely got his following. There's a lot of it.
He's like he's a really good actor. I feel like he could be in movies or TV shows or something. I just think he's like a legitimately like engaging screen presence.
Yeah, no, there's certainly something about him that sort of attracts you to whatever he's doing. In a match of 10 people everywhere, you're kind of keeping your eyes on Eddie Kingston, right? Were you surprised by the tag team championship result? So Jurassic Express retains here over Will Hobbs, Ricky Starks, Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland. It felt to me like this could have been a match where maybe a title could have changed hands. We probably know why it didn't when we get to the main event and what happened there. I would understand why you don't change the title right before you change something else. But Jurassic Express retains here. Were people, excited about that? Are they still as over as they were, earlier? Or have people sort of gone on to this, maybe somebody else needs a shot here?
So I should point out, right, last night, that was my first AEW show ever because I moved to the West Coast right before AEW launched, and they've barely done anything on the West Coast. Like they haven't been to California. I mean, they done a few shows in Vegas, but I was never. I live in LA, so I wasn't able to make it out to those shows. So last night was, despite following the product since it launched, I've never actually been to a show until last night. They were still over. Yeah, I mean, they're still over. I don't know that they're as over as they once were. They're definitely over with kids. So yeah, I don't think people were. I think people were maybe a little surprised, but nobody was disappointed. Basically,
Okay.
Yeah, including myself. Like I thought maybe Swerve and Keith Lee were going to win. I think Swerve ate the pin too, right? I think, which
Yes.
That surprised me, I think. Yeah, I was expecting Starks or Hobbs to maybe to eat the pin. But I still think the best is yet to come from Swerve and Keith Lee for sure.
They've got some chemistry. I'll admit I'm not a huge Keith Lee guy, but I did like what those two were able to do together. There were some spots that were entertaining. At one point, he sang something to his opponent who was outside the ring, and then Swerve jumps off of him and does a moonsault onto the guys on the floor. I thought that was pretty creative. Yeah, I thought this was a decent match. I know Tony was talking about the fact that this was a huge thing that they were trying to book around. Like this was one of their top draws for the pay per view, and that he believed that going in there in one of the last three spots is exactly where they should have been because there was a lot of buzz around this match. I'm a little surprised by that, to be totally honest with you. I didn't think of all this card that this was one of the even top 5 draws on this pay per view, but he clearly believes that that was in a spot because it needed to be there.
Yeah, for sure.
The main event, we got CM Punk, Hangman Page. This is the big ticket item of the show. A lot of people not really sure what to expect out of this. CM Punk, is he a babyface? Is he a heel? Hangman Page, is he babyface? Is he heel? Nobody seems to know too much. The response I'm watching while I'm watching this match, or I'm seeing while I'm watching this match, is that every time one of these guys goes to get some sort of reaction from the crowd, they're being heavily booed. But and maybe that sets up an opportunity for some sort of double turn, which doesn't happen. Good match back and forth. At one point, the referee is knocked silly. Hangman Page picks up the title belt, thinks he wants to use it, wants to secure the win because he has said on Dynamite before that he needs to save AEW from CM Punk. Thinks better of it, dispatches of the belt, goes to do the buckshot lariat, gets caught up in a reversal. CM Punk gets the GTS, gets the pin. CM Punk is the new AEW World Champion. What was the reaction from people? It seemed like they were hot for this match, especially considering how late this pay-per-view was running and how long people had been there. They still seemed to be up for it. Everybody seemed to be kind of hot for what was going on. But it seemed quite mixed as to who people were cheering for, even though there was a decent amount of respect for CM Punk when he won this thing. What was your take on this match and people's reaction to it?
Yeah, I thought I was positive that Punk was going to win. I don't know. I just had that vibe, and I'd had it since as soon as he was announced as soon as the main event was announced, a few weeks back. I was positive that Punk was going to win. I don't think anybody was mad, from what I could tell. Nobody was mad. You can't be mad at CM Punk winning a world championship for the first time in 8 years, right? He's one of the most beloved performers in the history of the business. I think people are definitely a little bit, a little bit sad for Hangman. Right? His reign, I wouldn't say his reign was disappointing or bad, but it was very weird. He was definitely not a transitional champion by any stretch, but certainly not much more than that, really, in my opinion. And I think he had some good matches, and I think he's actually like a very charismatic, very charismatic. He's obviously like absolutely amazing in the ring, and I think he could carry. I think he probably could have carried the company if CM Punk wasn't in the company, right? I don't think you can have Punk there at this stage in his career and not have him be the champion for at least a lengthy sort of reign.
Well, there's a lot going on behind the scenes too, right? Like CM Punk's got a massive contract. There's all this talk about whether or not he's a financial flop or he's a big revenue draw for them. At this point, it's now, put up or shut up. Put the belt on him. See what happens. See if this increases the numbers. And Tony Khan swears that everything CM Punk is involved in is better for AEW. And Tony Khan said this in the media scrum, there's not a single person in AEW who has done more financially for us than CM Punk, which is a nice compliment to CM Punk, but also sort of like a punch to everybody else on the AEW roster, right? Like, this is the guy that you're banking on, and for whatever reason, it took this long to get him in this picture. So I think you're right. Hangman was never trotted out front and center as the AEW champion. Like, nothing was really centered around him. With all the previous champions, the show often revolved around the champions. I never felt like that it was happening with Hangman. He just was sort of the champion, and other things were happening around him. And then when you could throw him out there for a segment, you did. It wasn't until the last
Yeah.
couple weeks of the build up towards this card and the idea that Punk might win this thing that Hangman became kind of front and center in all of this. So I think this was all about CM Punk, not much about Hangman Page. I agree with you. If Punk's not there,
Yeah.
Hangman's probably still the champion, and they book this all differently.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, what you say, it does feel like maybe they lost a little bit of confidence in Hangman as champion. Like maybe not long after he won the title. I mean, I still think him winning the title from Kenny was just beautiful and perfectly. And yeah, I think we'll always have that. He'll always have that. That's going to be in highlight packages in pub for the rest of AEW's existence. Yeah, I mean, well, like you said, I had a conversation with a couple of friends as well. Like he was kind of not featured during his reign. Like when the easy sort of thing to reference is called Steve Austin in '98 when he was or yeah '98 part of '99 when he was in like if when Austin was champion he was in basically every segment of Raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was on it at least every 30 minutes, right? There'd be like
Yeah.
something with Austin in, and I mean, they've got a big roster, they've got a lot of people to give time to. So yeah, I guess they just had to kind of they couldn't do that, and they didn't. So
I glossed over two matches that I'll very just quickly get your take on. House of Black defeated Death Triangle in what probably is going to be a glimpse of this trios division in AEW. What did you think of this? It was pretty chaotic, fast-paced action all the way through. And Julia Hart joins the House of Black.
yeah, fun match. Don't know. I'd like to see both teams move on different things now, which I think is probably where they're going to go. The Julia Hart thing is interesting. I mean, it's been telegraphed for weeks, right? We've all seen it coming. I think I liked the payoff there. I think it was mostly well done. I guess, yeah, I feel like she maybe should have turned that turn should have been solidified with the varsity Blondes, right? I feel like that sort of betrayal would have been a little bit more impactful. But yeah, maybe they'll do something with Julia and the varsity blonde Dynamite. But yeah, like, solid, really fun match. People were really into that for sure. House of Black are a really entertaining team.
Yeah, there's a lot of people involved in that match that are really, really good in the ring.
Everyone.
Scorpio Sky, Ethan Page, Paige Van Zant. They face Sammy Guevara, Tay Conti, and Frankie Kazarian. To me, I'm watching this going, this is really all about Tay Conti and Sammy Guevara and how much people hate them.
Yeah.
Is that the vibe? Is that what was going on there? This seemed to be booked around those two.
Yeah, and it got weird, right? Because this feud started before. This feud's been going on, I feel like, for a while now. The whole like American Top Team, Sammy Guevara, Tay Conti thing. They threw Kazarian in there too, but yeah, I feel like they had to sort of improvise a little bit they couldn't make. It was just weird because American Top Team are ostensibly like they're still a heel team, right? They're still bad guys. So this was like a heel versus heel thing. And during that, I think it was really mostly pretty well done. Yeah, it was mostly. I mean, yeah, you're right. I didn't actually think about that. Where I feel like it was supposed to be. Maybe on paper they wanted this to be Paige Van Zant's like big introduction, in-ring introduction, which it was still her in-ring debut, but yeah, it was her kind of in-ring debut was overshadowed a lot by other stuff going on.
Yeah, I felt like they booked Paige Van Zant kind of like they booked Ronda Rousey for her first match at WrestleMania. Is that kind of like get her in there? She does a series of stuff. She looks really strong. I thought she looked decent, but yeah, I believe like people were so engrossed in the hatred and the vitriol for Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti that they sort of overlooked everything else that was going on. Even when Frankie Kazarian kind of gave him the finger, I was a little disappointed he didn't stick with it. Like he does it, And then he says, "You guys are crazy. There's something wrong with the two of you." And it looks like he's going to ditch the team. But then eventually he comes back in and helps them again, which I thought, oh man, why'd they do that? They should have had him just bail.
Yeah.
Like, it would
Yeah.
have been better because everybody was so happy that he was like, "You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
I'm out." Right? Like,
Yeah,
people really
yeah.
popped for
Because
that. And then
there was that bit
changed his mind.
on Rampage when they were robbing the American Top Team headquarters, and Kazarian was like, "Man, you guys got me committing breaking and entering."
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was
So
interesting.
yeah,
Where would you rate this show? So in terms of, overall quality of the pay-per-view, if you had to give it like a rating out of 5, which is typically what I do when we do our live talking pay-per-views and shows on Facebook, where does this pay-per-view rank for you?
man, that's a tough one. I mean, being there certainly made a big difference. I think it was a very fun, exhilarating experience to just be there and witness everything. I don't. I think if I actually, when I rewatch it, I don't think it's gonna be like favorite AEW pay per view, and I don't know if it would even maybe be in my like top 4. But it was definitely really, really good. I think some of the matches on there are certainly up there with like a few of the matches that happened last night are definitely up there with some of my favorite AEW matches of all time. But I don't know as a whole necessarily that it's like my favorite AEW pay per view of all time. But it was solid. I would give it. I'd say probably like a good 8.5 out of 10. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it felt a little long as we were watching it. I was a little, um, sidetracked with the MJF stuff and the storyline there, but I thought his match was quite entertaining, perfectly booked. The CM Punk thing is big for AEW, so we'll see where that goes. I would certainly give it like a 3.5 to a 4 out of 5. I thought this was a pretty good pay per view overall. Not
Hmm.
everything hit, but the stuff that did, hit pretty good. So it was quite entertaining. Last thoughts before we close this off. What do you see going forward here for MJF? Is he right back into the thick of things in AEW? Is this it for him? Do you believe that this is kind of leading to their separation?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, they've got a few days to. I think obviously Tony Khan is going to want to keep MJF. I would imagine there's some sort of negotiations going on as we speak, right? But then maybe, like we said, they've got a big roster, and maybe Tony Khan doesn't think MJF is as valuable as MJF thinks he is. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I can't make I making a prediction right now because I can't. It's hard for me to envision MJF showing up in WWE at some point this year. But you can. I would have said the same about Cody, so I don't know.
Yeah, and we
It's
just
going to
have
be
no
interesting.
idea if this is real, right? Like we just really honestly have no idea. Like especially because we're talking about MJF here. Like in other situations, you'd be like, okay, well, we can kind of figure out this Sasha Banks and Naomi thing is real, but MJF, you just don't know. He might just want us all to think this is real, right? Him and Tony could
Yeah,
be
for
doing this
sure.
together, going, the more people think this is real, the better it is, right? We have
Yeah, I'm
no
sure they're
idea.
leaning into
So
it. Yeah, like I said, I think it. I think it definitely started out as was an actual disagreement there, and I'm sure that if they figure it out, they're going to lean into it and then try to turn it into like a thing where everyone will think all along. But yeah, I mean, my
yeah.
belief is that it wasn't that, at least to begin with.
Yeah, it sounds like there are some issues backstage between the two, but couldn't it be ironed out? Sure, it can be ironed out. Could it be turned into work? If MJF's involved, absolutely, right? So it'll be
Hmm.
interesting. All right, well, that was fun. I appreciate you giving us your feedback, your side of things from being there live, which I'm sure was pretty cool. I'm kind of jealous that you got the chance to do that. But they're coming to LA for Dynamite and Rampage and stuff. You plan on going?
You know what? So I'm not right now. I'm not planning on going, but I normally, if I go to shows like that, I normally don't. I don't tickets from StubHub like on the day, So we'll see. I might still go. It is in Inglewood, obviously. This is if you're not from LA, you won't understand this, but I live in the Valley, and Vegas is easier for me to get to than Inglewood.
There
That's
you
not
go.
true, but it might as well be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It feels just as painful. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right on. All right. Well,
yeah.
thank you. We appreciate everybody else who joined us on this one. If you didn't catch us live here on YouTube, you can listen to the podcast, download it on your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, where we would greatly appreciate it if you guys listen, download, subscribe, give us a 5-star review on that platform, and check everything out on TheSportster.com. We have all the articles from the pay-per-view. Our winners and losers is up there right now, and I'm sure we'll have more of the fallout that's coming from Double or Nothing, which we just reviewed here live on the podcast. For Norman and myself, thanks, guys. This has been another edition of the Sportster Show. We'll talk